Mantramulam Gururvakyam Mokshamulam Guru Kripa Akhandamandalakaram Vyaptam Yena Characharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Hiranyagarbhadarabdham Sesavyasadhimadhyamam Swami Sri Ramapadantam Vande Guru Paramparam Dheyam Sada Paribhavak Navavishtadoham Tirthaspadam Sivaviranchinutam Saranyam Bhrityartiham Pranatapalabhavabdhipotam Vande Mahapurushate Charanarvindam Vande Mahapurushate Charanarvindam.
It is a pleasure to be here with all of you. And even though Swami Veda is unable to be with us at this time, because he had a bout of food poisoning and diarrhea, I'm sure he is with us in spirit. We are here at the Sangha, and as Swami Veda has always taught us, we are not here as bodies, but we are here with a gathering of minds, with a meeting of minds. But I would also add, not our mind, but we want to be here together with the mind of Swami Veda. And it is to Swamiji, Swami Veda, that I pray to now, and pray that at this very moment, he throws his shawl over all of us, so that we can be together in his presence, to have him in our minds and in our hearts, as we share this space and time with him, who is now beyond space and time, but being the measure of the compassion of Swami Veda, our Gurudev Swami Rama, and the sages and rishis of our tradition, that they make themselves available to us through the mysterious means at their command. So let us try our best during this period of time to be as inward as we can, to put into practice and to fulfill what Swami Veda has always taught us, to be inward, to be as silent as we can. Even as we gather here to share our memories of Swami Veda, but it is the memories of the time that we have interacted with him in the body. Now, we always keep in mind that we are in the presence of Swamiji and of the tradition. And I'd like to share what little experience that I have had with Swamiji at the time when at the time of my first visit to the ashram, to Sadhana Mandir, after having met Gurudev in Singapore on 3 occasions, after which he had said that he would not be coming anymore to Singapore. So I said, well, I had to go to the ashram to see him. Excuse me. So at that time, he invited me to his cottage. And the one wonderful thing that he had told me, you know, I asked him, Swami, why is there so many statues of the Buddha in the grounds of the ashram? And he said to me, he had asked Gurudev that same question about our relationship with the Buddha. And Gurudev had said to him that we are preparing the way for the coming of the Maitreya Buddha. Now that is a statement that takes a little while to absorb. Now he said something very, very significant to my mind also. And he said, you know, there is a place without a GPS location, but there is a place where Gurudev goes to whenever he wants to sit in silence with Jesus, with Krishna, and with the Buddha. And he was speaking in the present tense, not in the past tense. Okay, I got the message. Am I speaking okay now? I'll bring myself closer to the microphone. Am I okay now?
Yunji,
Yes.
could you turn your camera slightly down? We cannot see your face fully.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Could you turn the camera slightly lower so we can see your face fully? We don't see your face fully.
Oh, sorry. I couldn't see myself. And also, it's not quite necessary to see me.
Yes, it's good now.
So that the point that I'm actually making now is that Swami Veda is not with us in body, but he could well be in that space with Gurudev, that space in that tradition right now. And from that space, I pray that we will make his presence felt the way that at one of the gatherings at ashram at Sarakagram, at the big haven when we had that big ceremony with Swami Veda. He made his presence felt in a very special way. Now this time around, well, I have been in Singapore for some time, but I'm very, very grateful to Khariji for sharing the latest observance of the ashram. And he said that the presence of Swami Veda was so strong. So Swami Veda has never left us. It always be with us. Just as we are part of the tradition and we continue to be part of the living tradition. And I'm so grateful to have been with Swami Veda on a couple of occasions, one of which he wanted to take a trip down the Mekong, that river that runs through Thailand and through Cambodia. The reason for that, he said, was he wanted to revisit, and he emphasized that word, revisit the path of the rishis when they traveled that way. And they told stories about the rishis had gone all the way. Well, you know about Angkor Wat and Angkor Thom, and you know of Borobudur, and you know of the temples in Bali. Swami Veda was very, very familiar with all those places. And its familiarity wasn't of the life that we had known with him, but of times in the past. But the times of the past was never of the past with him. They were always of the present. So even at that time when we had gone to Xi'an, and we had gone on the trip along parts of the Silk Road, all the way to Dunhuang. But there was a very significant episode when we went to visit a monastery in Xi'an, a Taoist monastery. And he had a wonderful meeting with the abbot of the monastery there. And I asked him when we went back to the hotel, I said, Swamiji, did you feel any connection? He said, immediately. The moment he put his foot on the ground as he stepped off the bus, he said he felt the current go through him. And that current is his way of verifying the presence of the tradition. And I remember when we were at, after the Kumbh Mela, we had gone to Varanasi and we had gone to Sarna. And at Sarna, he was given the honor of going down into the vault where the Buddha relic was, to bring it up. And the way that it is done with all the respect, he held the relic with his hand, and then he had to place it on his head. And that way, walked up the staircase to come up to the stage where we all were facing. And he said to us, the moment that relic, he held the relic on top of his head, he felt the current go through his body. That same experience of the current that he felt when Guru Dev first laid his hand on top of his head, on top of Swami or Dr. Ushabod Arya's head, that very same current. Now, I am looking forward to the day, and I pray that all of us would have the very same experience, where we would be able to feel that current, that blessing from the tradition. And recently, I felt, this was actually on the very first day of the spiritual festival, when I sat down and I thought of the tradition. And I thought of the expanse of the tradition that in my mind was made available to us through Gurudev, then through Swami Veda. And I thought about that trip that he asked me to make to an event in Java. It was a world meditation gathering. And as part of the event, I actually went to the Prambanan temple. Now that famous temple was where the Ramayana was performed, or is performed every year. And Swami Veda had said that, you know, the Ramayana is actually taking place now in a different dimension. Now, to me, it takes again something, a lot of assimilation to understand that. But I think the point that he was making is that the presence of the tradition is not of the past. The presence of the tradition is now. It is a living tradition. And for that, I cannot express my gratitude to Swamiji, to Swami Veda, to Swami Rama, and of course to the tradition, that we are now part of it. We have a connection to that, a present connection, a living connection. Now, I think we have a list of presenters, and if I would like to give space to some of the other speakers that have been that are available now. And Divya?
This is a very, very special occasion for all of us. And as I did a few years ago, I've been asked to say something about not Swami Veda Bharati, but Pandit Ushabod Arya and his early years in Guyana. I come from Guyana. In those days, it was British Guyana. It was a colony of Britain. Now, just for a little background, Guyana is a multi-ethnic, multicultural country in which you have people who are descendants from the Indian indentureship from India that came to work on the sugar plantations in Guyana. And there are Africans there are Chinese, there are Portuguese, and there are the local native people also. In the 1950s, about 55% of the population were Indians. The majority were Hindus, and there were also Muslims that came from India. And from as early as 1929, there were Vedic missionaries that were coming from India, visiting the colonies of Britain, where Indians had settled. So they came to Guyana, they went to Suriname, they went to Trinidad, and they were missionaries of the Arya Samaj movement in India. They went to Fiji, they went to South Africa, and so on and so forth. Pandit Usha Bodh Arya was one of those missionaries that came. He came in 1953 to Guyana, and he came as a missionary to Guyana as well as to Suriname and to Trinidad. But Guyana, British Guyana at the time, was going to be his base. He was 23 years of age, very young. I come from a small village, about 15 miles from the city. It was a small village at that time. And the gentleman that lives at the head of our street, had a shop. And he was one of 2 or 3 people that had a car in the village. So no one knew who was Pandit Usha Bodh. They had never seen him. There was no photograph that was sent from India about him. And this gentleman was asked to go to the airport to pick up Pandit Usha Bodh. So he went to the airport and he picked up Pandit Usha Bodh. And the Vedic mission in Guyana, the Arya Samaj mission in Guyana, had a building in the city. And that is where Pandit Usha Bodh was going to reside. So a few people from the village gathered at this gentleman's home, waiting for him to return from the airport to find out who is Pandit Usha Bodh. So the gentleman returned home, and so they asked him about Pandit Usha Bodh. And one of his first replies, I remember, I was not there in the conversation, but afterwards, you hear this on the discussion from him. He said, I have never seen a young Indian man so handsome in my life. Pandit Usha Bodh was young, he was light-skinned, very athletic, and he came with a very small travel bag. He traveled very lightly. 2 pairs of kurta, 2 pairs of dhoti, a pair of shoe, and a few books, and a few personal items, nothing more. So he came to Guyana in 1956, and he lived in Guyana from 1956 to 1962. And it was during that period that he married Lalita Arya, known as Amaji. She came from a very prominent Pandit family in Guyana. Her father was one of the trainees of Pandit Usha Bodh. My early recollections of Pandit Usha Bodh in Guyana was when I was about 6 or 7 years and had started learning Hindi with a village Pandit. And whenever Pandit Usha Bodh came to our village, he would always visit that Pandit. So Pandit Usha Bodh was quite a personality in those days. And many of us who know him afterwards know of his personality also. He was a young, learned scholar, a handsome young man. He had a good command of Sanskrit and Hindi, as well as English. And he gave interpretations to the scriptures as no other missionary in Guyana. There were several missionaries that came before him, but they didn't have a command, and they were not as learned as he was of the scriptures. There were missionaries that were also coming from Pakistan and parts of India on behalf of the Muslim community, but they had never seen anyone like Pandit Shabu. And immediately upon arriving in Guyana, he started doing a tremendous amount of work in the country. He was teaching, he was preaching, he was having Vedyajnas in various villages across the country, and became a household word in the homes of families. He was so well known. He was known as Panditji. He spent an enormous amount of time educating people in Vedic philosophy, in the Indian scriptures, in Hindi and Sanskrit, and in the performance of the Vedic rituals. So he invested a lot of time as a missionary, teaching both old and young people. And in 1958, he established what is called the camp system. There was an annual camp system, the Acharya Veda training camp, and the TTP program that we find in the ashram today, and we find in Minnesota and many other centers, is an extension of that training program that he started in Guyana in 1958. There were separate camps, training camps, for females and for males. And his first camp was held, I think it was 1958, in the eastern part of the country. And after that first camp, increasing numbers of young people came to the camps that were held the following years. And they were people not only of the Hindu tradition, they were people from other faiths that came, and they became converted to the Arya Samaj mission, to the Arya Samaj movement. At the same time, he established an ashram high school in a village east of the capital city, Georgetown, in which he wanted to train young people in high school education, as well as combining that with religious and cultural training. So he also established that school. It was called the Mortis Ashram High School. From the camps and the training that he did in Guyana, he trained a lot of young pandits. And these are pandits of my father's age. These would be people, if they're alive today, they would be in their 80s and 90s. And there were many, many pandits throughout the country that he trained, that became our first, when we started attending the Arya Veda camp, those were the pandits that trained us. He developed a very, very close relationship with a large number of families and individuals across the country. And he made a tremendous, tremendous contribution to religion, the religious life, the cultural life, and to the political life of Guyana. This is not mentioned very much of his work in Guyana. He was not engaged in politics in a direct manner. When he came to Guyana, and several years after that, his arrival, Guyana was having the political struggle exactly that had happened to India before, many years before. They were struggling for political independence in Guyana. Many of the people that Panditusha both trained as Pandits in Guyana became leaders of one of the political parties in Guyana. So in that way, he also contributed to the political life in Guyana. He was so well known that he was considered a second, what is called Chedi Jagan. Chedi Jagan was the leader, the Indian leader of one of the major political parties. And Chedi Jagan was also a handsome young man who was well known throughout the country. And Panditusha Bodh was considered a second Chedi Jagan. He was so well known throughout the country and so well liked that is, as I said, his name became a household name in the country. He left Guyana in 1962 after having laid a good foundation, after training many young people in the scriptures, in the rituals, in Hindi and Sanskrit. He left in 1962 for London when he began his formal academic studies in England. He returned about once or twice in the 1960s, but for very short periods. And then he returned in 1971. And in 1971, at that time, he was teaching as a professor at the University of Minnesota. So he returned in 1971 for an extended period. And it was during that period that I was one of the participants of his training camps. It was a wonderful memory. We were so excited when we knew he was coming because we heard from our parents of the training that Pandit Usha Bodh gave to the elder Pandits. And so he came and he stayed, he had a camp for 1 week. We attended that camp. But there was something very funny that happened when he returned in 1971. The Pandits who knew him of the 1950s and 60s, who were trained by him, when they came to the camp, they were then in their mid-40s, mid-50s, and so on. When they came to attend the camp in 1971 also, to listen to him, they commented to us, they said, this is not the Usha Bodh that we knew before. This is a different Usha Bodh. He came as a Vedic missionary when he went there in 1956. When he came in 1971, by then he had met his guru, Swami Rama. And his focus was not on preaching all the scriptures and in teaching Hindi and Sanskrit, but his focus was mainly on yoga and meditation. And that is why they made that remark, that he was very different on this visit than he was before. And so we spent some time with him. He went again to many villages, to many places, teaching for a couple of days before he left the country. And in the late 1980s, he returned a couple of times to Guyana. I had lost communication with him in 1981, but reconnected with him in 2001. I remember I went with my wife and daughter, our first visit to India. We decided to visit the northern part of the country, to Haridwar, to Rishikesh. And then I recalled that Swami Veda, well, Swami Rama had an ashram. in Rishikesh. So we asked people around, and they told us, yes, you can go into this street and you go to a certain point and you get the ashram. And so we went to the ashram. Now, mind you, I hadn't seen Swami Veda for more than around 25 years. So it was at the time of the Kumbh Mela in 2001. So we went to the ashram and we spoke to the gentleman who was at the reception area of Swami Raman ashram. And I told him we would like to see Swami Veda if he was here. And he said, yes, he's here, but he would not be able to speak to you because he's in silence. And he's preparing himself to go to the Kumbh Mela. So I said, you know, I gave him my background. You know, we came from Guyana, and now we're living in Costa Rica. So I wrote on a small piece of paper my name, and we are living in Costa Rica, we're from Guyana, and I said, take it to him. Maybe he will see us, I don't know. So he went, and after a few minutes he came back. And he told me, he said, Swamiji will see you. You are very lucky, he's going to see you. So we went to the back of the ashram there, where it used to be Swami Rama's area. We went upstairs, and then I saw Swami Veda. He was sitting on the floor like a rishi. Very serene, very quiet. And he was writing. You know, he had a style of writing. He had the British training of writing. And he was sitting there, very upright, like a rishi, and he was writing. And then he pointed to a space next to him for us to sit. So myself, Indira, my wife, and Aruna, my daughter, we sat. We sat for about 10 minutes. And then he decided to break his silence. And he welcomed us to the ashram. And he said, yes, I remember you. I remembered you from the training camp in Enmore in Guyana in 1971. And we spoke and so on. And then he said, you know, I have my tickets here. I'm going to Costa Rica in a few months. So I said, you're going to Costa Rica? Do you know anyone in Costa Rica? And he said, no, but I have my tickets already. I'm going to Costa Rica. Well, we restarted that connection with Swami Veda. He came to Costa Rica. He spent a couple of weeks, and he held several training sessions of various people. And from then on, we started the connection and going to Minnesota, and then going to India to visit the ashram. But I want to end off by saying about his contributions to Indian life, to religious life, cultural life in Guyana. He made perhaps the biggest contribution to Hindu life, to Vedic life in Guyana. Because of his very young and captivating personality, being a scholar of the scriptures, of the languages, and he had a good command of English, he was able to interpret the scriptures and make them easily understood by the people, not only Hindus, but many other people. And that is why whenever he was in a village or anywhere and he was involved in a yajna, whether he was involved in a wedding or any other ritual, a lot of people from the village came there to listen to him. His chanting of the mantras was exceptional. because of the Sanskrit tradition, the rich Sanskrit tradition that he came from. His chanting of the mantras was exceptional, and he taught several pandits that he trained how to chant the mantras, in addition to training them in Hindi and in Sanskrit. He loved Guyana very much. That is why not because he married someone in Guyana, but he loved Guyana very much because Guyana reminded him of rural India that he grew up in. And that is why he returned several times. But he made a tremendous contribution to the training, to the education of young Hindus. And many of these young Hindus became professionals in the country. There were not many professionals in the country, but they went abroad to study. Guyana did not have a university at the time. They went abroad to study, and they became professionals. And his establishment of the Ayurveda training camp continues up to today in Guyana. And those people from Guyana that settled in New York, in Miami, in Toronto, and in other countries, they continue having an annual Ayurveda training camp. One of the legacies that Mahamandaleshwar left in Guyana. Even with this short reminiscences of Mahamandaleshwar, it's not enough to say who was this great soul. And I want to thank you very much for this opportunity, for relating to you my early recollections of Mahamandaleshwar. Thank you very much.
I believe that we have Raghavendra, who will be sharing also about his time with Swami Veda. Raghavendra ji, please. Well, before you begin, I would just like to thank Daulat. Sorry, Daulat, I missed that. Thank you, Daulat.
Raghavendra ji is trying to unmute himself. In the meanwhile, I would like to briefly give an introduction of Raghavendra ji. Many of you are familiar with him. To some of us, we may have heard his name. We may or may not have met him. Raghavendra Adiga ji is an initiator in the Himalayan Yoga tradition. He first met Swami Rama in 1995, and then he has been very close to Swami Veda, who gave him the training of becoming an initiator in a very secretive way in 2006. I hope Raghavendra ji can share something about that with us. And he lives close to Bangalore. Thank you, Raghavendra ji. Over to you.
I met Swami Veda Bharati ji during Mahasamadhi of Swami Rama. It is on the 16th day after his Mahasamadhi. It was a ceremony being performed in Jolly Grant in the hospital campus. It was the 16th day. It is called Shodashi. I was there in that function, and I saw Swami Veda Bharati ji sitting on the steps of the dais, like a sage, very silently, with a composed gesture. And after seeing him, I ran towards him and I did my pranamas at his feet. And introducing myself, I am sitting set from the place. So hearing that, Swamiji slowly he extended his hand in a gesture of friendship, and I shook his hand, and he introduced me, saying, "I am Swami Veda Bharati. I am residing in the ashram in Rishikesh." So humbly, I never expected humbleness and that friendliness, gentleness. And he invited me to the ashram after the function ended. I went to ashram and stayed there, and it continued. Every year I used to go to ashram, receive his guidance in meditation, whatever he offers. And once during 2003 or 2004, I went to ashram, and immediately after my arrival, he called me to his chamber and ordered me to, he put me for 40 days silence. That I never expected. And Swamiji, okay, I can stay and participate in silence program. And also he told me, you have to complete some 1.25 1,25,000 Gayatri mantra, and also with the Havan. So the immediate response from my side was, Swamiji, what is the benefit I am going to get with this practice? Suddenly it came from my mouth, and he became very silent, and with smile on his face, he asked me, are you doing any business commitment with your sadhana? Don't expect anything from your sadhana, just surrender. Do it in the attitude of surrenderness. Whatever the deity offers you, accept it in surrenderance. So later, he in another instance, he clarified me that these expectations, these what you call the desires, the sankalpa with the material desires for spiritual practice are delimiting one. You create a boundary that limits your scope for spiritual growth. He clarified that. And in another incident, Swamiji invited a Hatha Yogi in the ashram, and he organized a lecture from that Hatha Yogi. At that time, I was in silence. I'm not supposed to speak or ask any questions. And there was around 50 to 70 people in the meditation hall. Swamiji was sitting next to him. Hatha Yogi was speaking. After the lecture, there was a question and answer session. Everybody were asking questions, and he was replying to their questions on Hatha Yoga and Kriyas. And I had a question, but I'm not supposed to speak. So I was searching around for a piece of paper and pen. I was sitting at the back, and there was no chance of getting a piece of paper or pen. Just I sat down quietly, watching at them. Suddenly, Swamiji turned to the Hatha Yogi and asked him, Swamiji, आप केचरी मुद्रा के बारे में कुछ बताइए. He asked that question, and he looking at me, he smiled. That was my question, actually. And Hatha Yogi explained about the Kechari Mudra in the Hatha Yoga way. Later, Swamiji clarified that we are not doing that kind of Hatha Yoga. The Hatha Yogis do, the Kechari Mudra Hatha Yogis do. in Raja Yoga tradition, Hatha Kechari Mudra is done in a different way. That kind of such incidences were happened, and it was very nice to be with his presence. Now we are missing that kind of guidance, that love, that compassion. And whenever I used to offer him some money, very rarely he hesitated. He hesitated to accept. You need money, you keep it, don't give it to me. By force, I used to offer him. And sometimes he used to ask me, do you want any money? Do you need money? If in such cases, he asked me. I gently hesitated to ask, and I asked him, if you give me some spiritual spiritual things, give me some practices, give me some mantras. That way I used to ask him. It was very wonderful. Today we are missing him, but physically, but in our meditations we really meet him on a daily basis. This is my short sharing of experiences. Thank you, Namitaji. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Raghavendra. That was truly heartwarming, and I have a lump in my throat just hearing about Swami Veda. We would now like to invite Adhikari-ji. Adhikari-ji is the most loving, tender, and smiling faces you will find in Sadhakagrama when you visit. And I always look forward to see him at the Mandala office when I reach. So Adhikari, just a little bit about, other than his smiling face that we all know, Adhikari ji has been long associated with Swami Veda, and he came in as a student at Gurukulam and then has been teaching at the ashram since 2006, 2007. And recently he has also completed his training as an initiator. So he is an initiator now, and he's also a member of the spiritual committee. Adhikari ji?
At the beginning, I was little excited and little because this is the first time in this kinds of meeting, and it was now I am good, and now I am in Mandala office also. Thank you everybody to joining this meeting, this satsang. Thank you to Yunji. Thank you Daulat ji. Thank you Raghavendra ji. And I am very happy, enlightened to listen to your experience with Swamiji. And this is a special opportunity to bring us together in this satsang on the special occasion of Swamiji's Mahasamadhi. And Swamiji's physical body, this Panchatattva, 5 elements body, it coming back, its source, but his works is eternal. It will be inspired to the whole humanity. And I also come here as a student, and I wrote a letter before I come here. At that time, our senior student here, like Bhagwan Devji, Vishnu, Vikas, they are here, and with their reference, I we come here. My wife Geeta, we both come here as a student. And in my thoughts, I think that Swami Veda, who is a disciple of Swami Rama from the Himalayas, he must be a very big beard man with long hair. And when I come here, Swamiji called us at evening, 9 o'clock, after 9. He used to meet with a guest at night. So, and he called us in his bedroom. And at that time, I surprised because at that time Swamiji was in his night gown, night dress. And I never expect that Swamiji will be like that. And he looked at me and he laughed at me. And he told me that I am not that kind of Swami. What do you think about? Yes, and I used to wear these kinds of cloth at night. And that was my first meet. And after then, the celebration of Diwali was here in front of Mandala office. And at that time, he told me that tomorrow I'll give you initiation. So at that time, I don't know what is initiation, what things happen, anything. Then we just come, myself and my wife, we both come at morning 4:30 to the initiation room. And at that time, Arvind was his helper. He guided us what to do. And it is opposite. After initiation, Swamiji offered the dress, a dhoti and towel to me, and a sari to Geeta. So I was surprised. And we bring some offering, and he told, no, you have to keep it. So I was really blessed. So he just like a father to me, and is everything to me. And he told me very secretly that if you cannot come from the front gate, you come from the back gate, from his dining hall, and if you have anything, then you told me. And sometimes we come from the back door and meet with him. And in the first meet, he just asked me about my life, why we come here, everything. Then he asked me, have you read Patanjali Yoga Sutra? Then I told, no, Swamiji, I not gone through the text. Okay, then we have a Gurukulam here. Then both of you join in the Gurukulam 3-year Gurukulam course and just help to Dona Mary. At that time, Swami Maradha was not Swami. At that time, her name was Dona Mary. So we just after we stay in the Gurukulam building, and we just be here, and we just totally become a part of this great family. For me, as Daulatji and Yunji, Raghunathji explains, that Swamiji's whole life is just like a Havana, yajna. We don't know how many years we live, but Swamiji teaches us how to live our life with every breath, with every moment. His life is a great example for me, for all of us. His life is just like a deepak, a candle. As the candle is burning and spread the light, when the oil is finished, after that also the wick is burn and spread the light. Same thing, Swamiji's whole life until his last breath, he spread the light of wisdom to the whole humanity. His life is just like a sandalwood. as sandalwood rock itself and spread the essence, the perfumes, and the coolness. Same things. Swamiji offer his whole body, whole mind, whole life to the humanity, to the spreading the wisdom of the Himalayan sages. I never asked any questions to Swamiji. As Raghavendra said, it just echo to me. Whatever I think, he knows that. And once in 2008, I asked Swamiji, I want to visit the Chardham, the pilgrimage, and it will take more than 1 month with my parents. Swamiji told, okay, you can go, but you may do a inner pilgrimage. And he asked me, do you have money for your transportation? Always he asks those things when I visit to my village, my home city. And when I sit in the train and I take a newspaper, the Times of India, and that page, there is articles in the speaking tree, that articles by Swami Veda Bharati about inner pilgrimage. Until now, that page is on my diary. And I thought that this topic, this article is especially for me. So, and another things, in 2009, Swamiji gave some silence practice to some of our friends like Ram Prakash and Sandeep for 40 days silence. And at that time, I feel very sad because Swamiji gave him the 40-day silence, and I'm not good in my practice sadhana, so he not gave me any kinds of this kind of intense practice. And at that time, I thought that silence means just taking rest, reading books, and relaxing, practicing all the relaxation practices guided by Swamiji. So, one kinds of jealousy in my mind. And when on the next day, when I come to the meditation, first things, when Swami saw me, he told, Adhikari, you don't need silence. And next year, he gave me 10 days of silence and asked me to attend in the training. And in that days, Swamiji stay here in this ashram in the campus, 6 months he stay here and 6 months he travel. And at that time, he gave me a small telephone. And he told me, this is 24-hour contact number. And I will contact you anytime. And when I'm in America, it is if it is a day here, then that is in there, that is night. And when there is night, it is daytime. So I was 24 hours, I'm aware of that telephone. If Swamiji's telephone comes, I should be aware. If I not take the telephone, it is not good. So every time I take the telephone. Even when I go to bathroom also, I take the telephone. When I sleep, I keep the telephone next to me. So always, I feel that Swamiji is always with me. And sometimes when he when he started travel, before he started his world tour, he gave us many assignments for next 4, 5, 6 months. And when he talked with us in that telephone, everybody together, all students together and listen to his voice. And he asked the assignment what we not complete. He not asked about the assignment what we complete, but he asked for the assignment where we not complete. And we thought, how Swamiji knows everything. So, and whatever he thinks also, he knows that. And I thought that he set up all these hidden cameras and hidden mic sound so that he knows everything. But he's just like Sabajjata. He's omniscient, omnipresent. He's just like a youth Purus, a legend of this era. And he's just like a Avatarit Purus. That means a incarnation of enlightened being. He was here, he's always here until now also to guide us, to protect us. And we feel his presence all the times, every moment. And especially day before yesterday, we feel his physical presence, the same smell all around in this initiation room, in the meditation hall, everywhere. So in this way, he is always with us, and he taught us very, very simple things like relax your forehead. Anybody comes here. He told us, did you teach us 2-minute meditation? Did you guide us how to sit? The very basic things. And his main teachings is that Chitta Prasadana, making the mind a pleasant place through the practice of emotional purification and Brahma Viharas. So, and when his presence, he just like a catalyst, Utprerak. His presence makes our mind settled. So his physical body is not here, but he is always with us. He is in our heartbeat. He is beating in our heart. So I feel him. I feel his presence with all of your heart. And especially in full moon meditation, we connect with that Guru. And in this way, this is my very little experience with him. So I am blessed to be here, and I am very happy to see you all in this meeting. So this kind of satsang also is a blessings of the Guru. So one another things just come to my mind that in this ashram, especially after May, June, July, August is a very silent time. Not so many guests come to the ashram. So one thoughts come to my mind that Swamiji left his body in the month of July. So I think he may thought that in this special occasion also, some people may come to the ashram. And really, every Guru Purnima and every Mahasamadhi, there are hundreds of people we gather and we celebrate his presence. And last day before yesterday also, we had about more than 100 people are here, and we celebrate. We following all the guidelines of this made by government, and it was very nice. And we feel the same energy everywhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Khariji, for that beautiful sharing. It is so heartwarming to listen to these experiences with Swami Veda. It touched so many of us. At this point, I'd like to request that, as you can see, we are running a little bit behind time, and we are going to go into a guided meditation by Yunji. Before that, I'd like to share that we have a documentary on the life of Swami Veda. The documentary is about 18 minutes. Those of you who would like to stay back after the meditation, we would like to share this film with you, and it's completely optional. If you have the time and you'd like to stay after the meditation, you can. Thank you so much. And we shall now prepare for meditation.
Thank you, Khariji, and thank you, Dalaji and Raghavendraji. It's always so inspiring to listen to all of you. Before we go on to the next segment of this program, that is the documentary that Namita had just mentioned, we'll do just a very short meditation as we are running out of time. And pardon my voice because it's a little bit hoarse today. The usual posture, observing the flow of your breath. Breathing gently and smoothly. No jerks, no pauses in the breath. Become aware of your breath at the navel center. Letting the breath flow from the navel center to the nostril and back to the navel center. Pausing the breath, the nostril. Now allowing the breath to flow between the nostril and the point between the eyebrows and back to the nostril. That breath now coming to rest at the ajna. That relaxed breath, relaxed mind now flows into the forehead, relaxing the forehead, relaxing the eyes, the hinges of the jaw, the shoulder joints, the heart center, the thigh joint, relaxing your entire body from top to toe, toe to top. Again, attention at the thigh joint, the navel center, the heart center, the shoulder joint, the hinges of the jaw, relaxing the eyes and the forehead. Bringing your mind's attention again to the point between the eyebrows, the eye, the ajna. The allowing the mantra to arise. And if your mind prefers to go into the silence, let it be so. Letting your breath go to the nostril. Remaining at the nostril. May I once again take this opportunity to thank everyone here. Dalaji, Raghavendra, Khariji, it's always a pleasure to be listening to you all. I know that I have not personally met many of you. Perhaps one day I shall. And I'm very thankful that we are able to share this little time together with all of you. And I'm very grateful also to have some of your center leaders here to share this time. But I'm also mindful that it is not all of us sharing the time here, but we are sharing the time with the tradition. And I bow to Gurudev, to Swami Veda, and to Swami Ritavan, the continuation in the physical form of the lineage of the ashram. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Yunji, for coming to guide the satsang at the very last minute. We're very grateful. You took out time with almost no preparation. Thank you. Thank you, Dolaji, for sharing with us parts of Swami Veda's life that remain unknown to most of us. Thank you, Raghvendraji, for reminding us about Swami Veda's endless love. And thank you, Khariji, for sharing your beautiful memories of Swami Veda. I would also like to thank Namata for taking this initiative and bringing us all together today. And finally, thank you to each and every one of you who is present here for joining us today here, for remembering Swami Veda, his life and his teachings, his love and his grace. If he was here today in his physical body amongst us all, he would be so happy to see us all gathered together beyond the boundaries of time and space. We have people here from Japan and from the Americas. We have people here from at least 27 countries here. I counted. It's his love that has brought us all together here. So thank you. This is what he always wished for from us and for us. This is his Sangha. Thank you. We will now proceed to watch that documentary, Swami Veda's documentary that we have available. It is optional. Some of you might actually have seen it at the ashram. If you would like to see it, we will start presenting in just about a minute. And others, if you wish to leave, that's okay. So thank you for coming. Thank you for coming.
Shall we close with a prayer if Adhikari ji is still here?
Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Purvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityormukchiyamamrita Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Purvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityormukchiyamamrita Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Purvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityormukchiyamamrita Om Shanti Shanti Shanti